Wait a second. Tracks and circles.
Yes.
Not the 100-meter dash, or like the 60-meter dash.
But that's because you don't go around, you're running not the circle,
Yeah, like,
but you're still running in base.
My favorite thing is like with the winter and Summer
It's the same
Olympics,
thing
it's
with
like Summer
speed skating.
Olympics are sports that rich people play, and Winter Olympics are Red Bull. You know, like the Red Bull videos where people just launch themselves off of things.
I feel like some of the winter sports are definitely rich people sports.
All of them are
Like
rich
who
people
does
sports.
curling as a regular sport?
You don't become an Olympian without it.
Love it. Yeah.
Well, I see you guys seem interested in the Olympics. So are we big Olympics fans?
I would
Most
follow
parts,
it.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, my wife loves to watch the Olympics. She's watching it on and off and things. Me, not so much, so. But those aren't my sports. Let's see, in any case, you seem quieter today. Last week you were perky and energetic.
it's just kind of like because in the Olympics, it's not always the best playing that specific sport. Because usually those people are doing professional sports and not the Olympics,
Yeah.
except basketball.
This is one of the first years that the U.S. men's hockey team is packed with NHL players. They actually
Okay.
pulled a lot of them
Hate to interrupt, I mean, it's feeling more and more like my home where I speak and nobody listens, so, okay. It's just that I keep saying, am I here, do I exist? And they don't even notice me saying that, they're too busy talking about themselves. Couple preliminary things by way of announcement. Announcement number one, you have papers, do we not? And when are they due?
March 3rd.
They're due on Tuesday the 3rd, so don't forget about them. And don't wait till the last minute. These don't lend themselves to be done as a rush job, let's say. So put some time into it. There's a reason I give you a bunch of lead time. It's so you have time to reread the readings, to examine the notes, to annotate the readings, and produce good paper, so take advantage of it. Anyone have any paper questions? Okay. Again, I will look at rough drafts, I will look at outlines, but the key is you can't just dump them on me and say I need it right away. You gotta give me some days if you expect me to really look at it. So that was number one. Number two, looking at the syllabus, we're in the process of we're close to making the transition from Toquivile to the Marsden book. And theoretically, I see some people wrote the Marsden book and I'm duly impressed, so. I'm assuming not many of you have finished the reading in Marsden because it's pretty lengthy. But hopefully most people have at least started it. And again, one of the rule of thumbs for the whole course is try to keep up with the readings. Because you just get a certain amount behind, you will never be able to catch up. So don't forget about that. I'm still talking about Toquivile today, but by the end of class, by the second half of class, we'll be talking about Marsden. Fair enough? Very quiet today. What if I make a comment about the Olympics? Will I get a reaction? In any case, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, we had been discussing the type of despotism Toquivile believes democracy needs to fear, is in jeopardy of. He doesn't really give it a name. It's commonly called a soft despotism. That's a name that's used sometimes. I like to call it the omnicompetent nanny state. But whatever you call it, it is a despotism whose hallmarks are that it is gentle but all-encompassing. There are no dungeons here. There are no torture chambers, as there were in the old despotism. This is a despotism that is mild, that is gentle, but nonetheless is suffocating and ultimately dehumanizes ultimately dehumanizing. What he asks us to imagine a world of atomized consumers. Everyone, this vast throng of people, everyone immersed in their own private affairs, everyone focusing on perhaps an immediate family, perhaps one or two close friends, their creature comforts, and being largely oblivious to anything else. And among this race of kind of psychologically isolated, atomized people stands an omnicompetent bureaucracy, a massive bureaucracy that's involved in everything, that regulates everything, that spits out policies on every possible topic. Okay, this omnicompetent bureaucracy is well-meaning. It wants to help people. It wants to protect people from the bad things that can happen in the course of their lives. So it's almost parent-like, he said. It views them the way a parent views a small child in need of love and protection and whatnot. But this pervasive regulation, this micromanagement of life, dehumanizes people. It makes them passive. It makes them content to simply do what they're told. It makes them content with asking permission before they do anything at all. So it suffocates them. It doesn't let them really become adult human beings. It keeps them in a state of perpetual childhood. Or the other example he uses is it reduces them to the level of sheep. Passive, gentle animals that just want to chew the grass and be left alone, that don't show any sort of initiative or assertion or anything like that. This soft despotism is created via the democratic process, not in the sense that there's a referendum about it, but in the sense that people keep asking government to become more centralized. They keep asking government to expand in its scope, to do more and more things. And at the end of that road, we slide into the new despotism, the soft despotism, correct? It is created unintentionally via the democratic process. But once it is established, the democratic process ceases. Because everything's run by this vast bureaucracy. Elections don't really matter. They don't really change anything. And besides that, people just aren't interested. People who've been socialized to be so passive, to simply do what they're told, are not going to be psychologically capable of, exerting themselves in the political arena, of taking charge of their own government. Again, I said last time, I think 2-year-olds don't vote on who mommy is. Okay? So the moral of the story is this new despotism ultimately suffocates democracy and political democracy, and it goes away. Hence we see how democratic social conditions can threaten political democracy, individual freedom, and human dignity. We then took a look at raised the question, is this inevitable? Toquivile says no. It's what will tend to happen sooner or later if we do nothing. But now that we know we face the danger, we can do something. You have a river that is going to flood most springs. You build a dam. You build levees to contain the water. And in the age of democracy, we have to take steps to prevent it from issuing in the omnicompetent nanny state. America gives us examples. Here are the type of things you can do. The list had 3 items. 1, decentralized government, right? Decentralized government. America had an extremely decentralized political system, and that's important for a variety of reasons. These smaller units of government offer vehicles of opposition to the bigger levels of government. They act as a check on the bigger levels of government. Individuals can't have much of an impact, but large numbers of individuals can. And these localities are in a position to resist the efforts of the central state to expand and to absorb them. But even more importantly, these local governments instill in people public spiritedness. Okay, initially perhaps out of self-interest, people engage in their community, but what starts as a matter of self-interest over time becomes something more. Over time becomes something more. It becomes a habit. It becomes a commitment. Okay, people acquire a sense of ownership. This is their town, their neighborhood. They have to take care of them. They have to make sure everything is good with them. So it engages people in public affairs. It makes people less individualistic. It reduces their consumerism, and atomized consumers are replaced to some degree by citizens aware of their civic responsibilities. Okay? Number 2, associations, right? America's associational line. America is the land of groups. Americans form organizations for everything, for, to do really big things, do really small things, do really important things, to do really trivial things. Americans have this gift for association. They have a gift for self-organization. Okay? So Americans are members of all these associations. These associations are huge dots, if you will, on the cognitive map of America. They're big things in the American social landscape. How do they help us? Again, these groups can check government. Strength in numbers. Number 2, these groups do things that otherwise might be punted to government. The more these groups do, the less government will be asked to do. The more responsibilities these groups perform, the fewer responsibilities government will be asked to perform. So these groups, by their work, do a lot of heavy lifting. They solve social problems. They meet societal needs. And as a result, they prevent government from being sucked into that vacuum. And number 3, of course, these groups instill in people a sense of belonging, public spiritedness, sense of engagement. If you're somebody who's active in a variety of these groups, that means your soul isn't given over completely to individualism and consumerism. It means there's something else going on in your mind and heart. And again, when the key here, go back to your 5 attitudes, is reducing those attitudes. The way I like to envision it, the new despotism is a train. The attitudes are the locomotive. If you can stall those attitudes, if you can prevent people from becoming totally individualistic, from being totally absorbed in consumption, you can prevent the new despotism from coming about. And finally, last but not least, there is religion. The religiosity of Americans. the religiosity of Americans. And again, just reviewing the parts of this we've done, because we got a little bit into this. We talked about religion's foundational role in social life. Religion's foundational role in social life. Religion is found wherever you find human beings. It exercises a big influence on human conduct. It affects the way societies are ordered, what their institutions look like, what their norms are. So religion is a foundational feature in social life. Okay? Likewise, religion plays a critical role in the democratic revolution that Toquivile believes was on the cusp of sweeping the old order away. The first chink in the armor of the old aristocratic order was the social mobility created by the church. Because in the church you were not locked into the spot in which you were born. It's possible for a peasant or someone like that to become a priest, a bishop, in some cases even a pope. Okay? So it creates social mobility in a society which doesn't believe in it, which doesn't want it to exist. So it subtly attacks the democratic, it subtly attacks the aristocratic social order. Okay? Additionally, it was Christianity that first brought into the Western world the idea that human beings are equal, that everyone has values, that everyone has dignity, that everyone is worthy of respect. Those beliefs are in tension with an aristocratic society. Okay? And Christianity introduces this into the heart of Western civilization. So over a long period of time, Christianity is slowly working beneath the surface to subvert the older aristocratic order, to transform it into something different, something that treats individuals, even the poorest and most obscure, as valuable, as important, as worthy of respect. Something which asserts the dignity of all men. Okay? And then we moved to America, did we not? Okay, then we moved over to America, and we started talking about religion's role in the launching of American democracy. Did we not?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. I like nodding. Nodding's good. Feedback's good. How so? Well, broader question, why didn't America establish an aristocratic society? Settlers came from an aristocracy. Why wouldn't they create here what they knew and were familiar with and whatnot? The only type of society they've ever known. The only type of society they ever experienced. And we said there were a bunch of reasons. There was a shortage of aristocrats. To have an aristocracy, you need a serious number of aristocrats. America lacked that. Few aristocrats made the journey to the New World. Over and above that, the open land. Back in the old aristocratic order, all the land was owned by the aristocrats. So everyone else had to work on land owned by the aristocrats and live on land owned by the aristocrats. But in America, there's lots and lots and lots of land. So people are free, to establish their own property. Now, no longer is the land controlled by a tiny proportion of the population. There's open land available to anyone who's willing to work hard to, chop down some trees and build a home and start a farm and things like that. And finally, there is the form of religion that ended up in New England, in the portion of America that comes to be known as New England. The New England settlers came out of the broad religious movement known as Puritanism. Elizabeth I, when she ruled in England, had established a church known as the Anglican Church or the Episcopal Church or the Church of England that was consciously designed as a compromise. She had subjects who were Protestant, subjects who were Catholic. She didn't want a civil war over this. She tried to craft a church that almost everyone could live with, that everyone could find what they like in. Okay? However, this Elizabethan settlement, although it avoided in the short run a civil war, she's dead for a few decades, 4 decades of civil war breaks out, nonetheless didn't satisfy everyone. There are people who thought the church was too Protestant. In other words, Catholics. There are people who thought the Church of England was too Catholic. People who are really hardcore Protestants said we don't want to be part of any church that has these Catholic elements in it. So these people want to purify the church of the Catholic elements. So they are come to be called Puritans. They're about purifying stuff. They're talking about purifying the church. There are many different types of Puritans, and they don't necessarily see eye to eye, and they don't necessarily get along. But what unites all the different Puritans are, they don't want to be part of a church that has any Catholic elements. Okay? They want to purify the Church of England, even if they can't necessarily agree on what a completely purified church would look like. Okay? Starting in the 1820s, some of these Puritans start settling in the New World, sailing across the Atlantic. Right, we all know, the Pilgrims landing at Plymouth Rock and Mayflower and all that stuff. Okay, those group of Puritans, the ones who sailed on the Mayflower, they were a particular type of Puritan who wanted nothing to do with the Church of England. They didn't want to enter a building that they'd reached. They were fed up. They're done trying to change this thing. They want nothing to do with it. So they go to America so they can have religious freedom. Over in England, there's an official church. If you're not a member, you're in trouble. If you try to set up a competing church, you're in trouble. Those kind of things are not tolerated. You will worship, and you will worship in an Anglican or Episcopal church. These guys don't want to do that, so they go over America to freely practice their religion. Now, it's important to understand what they mean when they say, we're here for religious freedom. They didn't come to America so each individual could go his or her own way. They didn't come to America so that Amanda can worship her way, and Kate another way, and Isabel a third way. Okay? They went as a collectivity. Religious freedom they wanted was a communal freedom, a collective freedom. Their freedom to set up the kind of church they want and to run it without any outside interference, without anyone telling them you're doing things wrong. They weren't interested in each individual sort of going his own or her own way. I'll give an example in a second. Yes?
So did none of the Catholic, Scots arrive at that time either? Or is that like after like the
That comes a little later,
like
in
after like
1620.
the Battle of Culloden and stuff like that? Like,
Yeah,
that's when they
as we remember, think of the name of one of our states. Maryland, right? Maryland. Maryland was a colony set up by a by a Catholic nobleman, so Catholics could get out of England and practice their Catholicism. It didn't endure long in that form because Protestants also settled there and soon became the majority, and so the name stayed the same, but the realities changed. But for example, if we're in the community of the Mayflower, where the guys are laying in Plymouth Rock, and let's suppose someone comes down the road. Let's say it's our buddy Max here. It's our buddy Max here, and he says, "Guys, I've been thinking about it. I think our church here that we all belong to is messed up. I think we have to make some changes." "What changes do you want to make, Max?" we ask. Max lays out his changes. And we say to Max, "We don't like your changes. We think they're crazy. We think you need to rethink them. You need to get your head on straight. Get rid of these crazy ideas." Max said, "No, I'm convinced I'm right." They said, "Fine, that's great, Max. You have 30 days to get out of town. If you're here after 30 days, we hang you." Okay? It was a collective freedom, and that's how Rhode Island happened. People kicked them out of where they were. They needed somewhere to go. They went to Rhode Island. He talks about this in the book, I think, or was that Marston? I'm trying to remember. I looked at both this afternoon. So it was for collective freedom. Okay, and then you get to 1640, and now you get a nasty civil war. And although the Puritans are eventually going to win it, civil wars are not fun. They're not enjoyable. They're not where you want to go on vacation or something. So some of the Puritans say, we're on the Puritan side, but we don't want to be fighting. We don't want bloodshed. We don't want to end up dead. They migrate to America. Oh, you're locked out? Yeah, Max.
Yeah.
So you migrate to America. So you get these Puritan churches settling up in New England. Okay? Now these Puritan churches tend to have, again, there's different stripes of Puritan. They come in different varieties. But generalizing, we can say they tended to have very democratic ecclesiologies. They tended to have very democratic ecclesiologies. Now you might be wondering, what does ecclesiology mean? That's one of those big words. Ecclesiology means how you organize a church. What a well-organized church looks like. They tended to have a very democratic ecclesiology. They didn't have bishops. There were no bishops, and how did they make decisions about what they believed? They would simply meet together and hold a vote. So their churches were organized very democratically. It wasn't like there was a bishop or some kind of clergyman who had a lot of authority. The ultimate say rested with the congregation. And what the congregation said carries the day. Okay? So they settle there and they're building their churches, and their churches are organized very democratically. But they also have another problem. They also need to have a government. Okay, now they don't have a lot of experience setting up governments. They've always lived under government over in England that predated them by hundreds and even thousands of years. But now they got to set some up. Well, you might say maybe they would copy what we had in England, but the problem was they didn't have a king and they didn't have aristocrats. So they couldn't really do what was done in England about government. What to do, what to do. We have a problem. We've never set up a government before. This is a whole new task. The answer they come up with is, we'll organize our government just like we organize our church. Small d, democratically. So they might have a meeting one day. Let's say we're on Saturday, they have a big meeting. In the morning, they function as a church. If they take a lunch break and come back after lunch, now they're meeting as the government. They're making laws and public policy decisions. And they literally would take their church charters. Another word for church charter is a church constitution. And they, setting up a government, they'd simply cut where it said church, they would say civil body politic or public state. Where it said pastor, mayor. Where it said elders, councilmen. And they would literally take their church constitution and make it the very basis of their civic constitution. Let me give you a sample of this. Here we go. I forgot to note page 39. Very beginning of the page, you're reading from a document. The name of that document, he doesn't give, I believe, the name of that document. It is known as the Mayflower Compact. Okay, it establishes, as they say, a civil body politic. So we use names are underwritten, having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith, and the honor of king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia. Okay, they're in Massachusetts. They weren't good with geography. They thought they were in Virginia. Do by these presents solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof do enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, and constitutions and officers from time to time as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. So Toquivile tells you the following. Let's see, page 35. The immigrants, or as they so well named themselves, the Pilgrims, they were the first immigrants in New England, belonged to that English sect whose austere principles had led them to be called Puritans. Puritanism was not just a religious doctrine. In many respects, it shared the most absolute democratic and republican theories. And again, over on page 38 in the final paragraph, Puritanism, as already remarked, was almost as much a political theory as a religious doctrine. So based in large part on their religious heritage, the religious tradition they're a part of, they established democratic government. Now, and New England is populated largely by fervent Puritans. The people who settle there are motivated almost entirely by religious reasons. Now, Puritanism plays a role there, a big role up in New England. Other parts of the country, you tend to get different religious groups. Pennsylvania, you get a bunch of Quakers, right? Maryland, you get some Catholics, so they're pretty soon outnumbered by Protestants. Down south, you get, the Carolinas and Georgia. You get tons of Baptists. Methodists come later. The Methodists didn't exist yet, but yeah. So there, that's the settlement pattern. But the key is New England emerges as the intellectual center. New England is where books get read. New England is where schools get open. When education spreads south, New England is where the teachers go to train to become teachers. New England opens colleges. They're still around today, Harvard and Yale, to name just two of them. New England is where the books are published, where what we would call magazines or journals or something are published. New England emerges as the intellectual center of these English colonies in North America. So even though the whole country was not dominated by Puritans, not all the colonies were overwhelmingly Puritan, as was New England. For this reason, Puritanism exercises a disproportionate influence. Page 35. It was in the English colonies of the North, on the middle of the page, by the way, better known as the states of New England, that the two or three main principles now forming the basic social theory of the United States were combined. New England principles spread first to the neighboring states, and then in due course to those more distant, finally penetrating everywhere throughout the Confederation. Their influence now extends beyond its limits over the whole American world. New England civilization has been like beacons on mountain peaks, whose warmth is felt close by, but whose lights shines to the farthest limits of the horizon. Okay, so these Puritan habits of thought, both religiously and politically, exercise a huge impact on the whole country. Exercise a huge impact on the whole country. Now the question is, Toquiville's there in the 1830s. We're talking about the 1620s, 1640s, early 1700s. He talks about that America founded by these fervently religious people who are there for religious reasons, who take their religious faith seriously. Does this religiosity that was characteristic of early America, that America, still endure in Toquiville's America? Because he's there in the 1830s. A lot of time has elapsed. Is something different? Toquiville says America still remains an extraordinarily religious society. Page 291. America is still the place where I'm in the first full paragraph on 291 for those following. Little more than halfway down it. America is still the place where the Christian religion has kept the greatest power over men's souls. So it's skipping down a bit. Skipping down a few paragraphs, I do not doubt for an instant that the great severity of mores, which one notices in the United States, has its primary origin in beliefs. Strict morals stem from the fervent religious belief. And then over in 293 he says, I'm in a paragraph in the middle that begins for the Americans. For Americans, it's not a question with them of sterile beliefs bequeathed by the past and vegetating rather than living in the depths of the soul. And then over on page 542, right at the start of that chapter there. In the United States, he says, when the seventh day comes, trade and industry seem suspended throughout the nation. All noise stops. A deep repose, or rather solemn contemplation, takes place. At last the soul comes into its own and meditates upon himself. On this day, places of business are deserted. Every citizen, accompanied by his children, goes to a church. There he listens to strange language apparently hardly suited to his ear. He is told of the countless evils brought on by pride and covetousness. He is reminded of the need to check his desires and told of the finer delights which go with virtue alone and the true happiness they bring. When he gets home, he does not hurry to his business ledgers. He opens the book of Holy Scripture and there finds sublime and touching accounts of the greatness and goodness of the Creator, of the infinite magnificence of the works of God, of the high destiny reserved for men, of their origins and of their claims to immortality. So the America he visits still remains a religious country, far more religious than his home country of France. You with me? Okay. So now the question becomes, remember the context in which we're discussing religion, how it's contributed to the success of American democracy. I'm going to give you a list of ways in which the religiosity of Americans has contributed to the success of American democracy. To begin with, he tells us, religion rallies America around democracy, the principles of democracy, and around the U.S. Constitution. Americans are a religious people, and when they go, they take seriously what they hear in church, and when they go to church, they are told democracy is a good thing. Support the American Republic. Pay your taxes. Follow the laws. Be a good citizen. I mean, they could be hearing their democracy is evil, get rid of it. But they're being told by the clergy to rally around democracy. And that's what they do. Page 288. Very top of the page. Most of English America was peopled by men who, having shaken off the Pope's authority, acknowledged no other religious supremacy. They therefore brought to the New World a Christianity which I can only describe as democratic and republican. This fact singularly favored the establishment of a temporal republic and democracy. From the start, politics and religion agreed, and they have not since ceased to do so. And then over on page 289, fourth full paragraph on the page. One can say that there is not a single religious doctrine in the United States hostile to democracy and republican institutions. All the clergy there speak the same language. Opinions are in harmony with the laws, and there is, so to say, only one mental current. Okay? So again, Americans are religious people. The religion they practice is a religion that celebrates democracy, encourages them to be good citizens, and that's an important contribution. Contribution number 2. Christianity acts as a check on those 4 attitudes or 5 attitudes rather, we encountered earlier. It acts as a check on those attitudes. Remember, those attitudes are the ultimate problem. They're what push you into the new despotism. So if you can limit those attitudes, if you can prevent them from totally dominating, you can avoid the new despotism. Very bottom of page 444. One must admit that equality, while it brings great benefits to mankind, opens the door to very dangerous instincts. It tends to isolate men from one another, so that each thinks only of himself. It lays the soul open to an inordinate, I've lost my play. It lays the soul open to an inordinate love of material pleasure. The greatest advantage of religions is to inspire diametrically contrary urges. Every religion places the subject of man's desires outside and beyond the worldly realms, and naturally lifts the soul into regions far above the senses. Every religion also imposes on each man some obligation toward mankind to be performed in common with the rest of mankind, and so draws him away from time to time from thinking about himself. Thus, religious peoples are naturally strong, just at the point where democratic peoples are weak. Okay? Democratic social conditions foster consumerism. They foster an obsession with improving your standard of living and acquiring more creature comforts. But the Americans, so to the extent they're a democratic people, they are strongly drawn to consumerism. But they're not just a democratic people, they're religious people. And when they go to church, what are they told? Man does not live by bread alone. There are more important things than material goods. Material goods are not the thing that ultimately matters. Right? It's easier for a rich man it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to inherit the kingdom of God. They hear a message critical of consumerism. Now, that doesn't mean they forget about their creature comforts, they never mind. But it acts to moderate it, to mitigate it. Remember the description I read you just a little while ago in 542 about what they do on Sundays. What that shows you is their whole life isn't immersed in consumerism. There are other things going on there as well. Their heart and their mind are not completely absorbed in consumerism. The element portions of their heart and mind are focused on something else. Same thing, they tend to be individualistic, but they go to church and they're told, you are your brother's keeper. You're responsible for other people. You have to take care of others. So it acts to reduce their individualism. They may want to forget about anything other than their immediate family and a few close friends. But when they arrive in church every Sunday, they're reminded of the world beyond them. They're reminded that they are responsible for others, that they're responsible for their whole community. Fair enough? We all together? And next we have, you're quiet today. Everyone looks sleepy. I don't know why that is. But you're sucking the energy out of me. I'm going to drink a lot of Coke here, making me like you. In any case, item number 3 on this handy-dandy list, moral consensus. The religion unites the American people morally. Religion unites the American people morally. It puts them on the same page on moral questions. Puts them on the same page in moral questions. Now, Toquivile says that might be thought surprising because we know that in America there are all these different churches. It's a very pluralistic religious scene. They are not all members of the same church, as sometimes it's found in European countries. So how is it if they practice different religious faiths, they have the same morality? Toquevile's answer is on the bottom of page 290, last paragraph on 290. There is an innumerable multitude of sects in the United States. They all agree in the worship they offer to the Creator. Right? They're all different in the worship they offer to the Creator, but all agree concerning the duties of men to one another. Each sect worships God in its own fashion, but all preach the same morality in the name of God. Though it is very important for man as an individual that his religion should be true, that is not the case for society. Skipping down a bit, moreover, all the sects in the United States belong to the great unity of Christendom, and Christian morality is everywhere the same. So the moral of the story is, yes, there are many different churches in America, but at the same time, they all teach the same morality. Why is that? Because the churches in America are all forms of Christianity. There's no one else there, as it were. What you have there is a multiplicity of Christian churches, and being Christian, despite their differences, they do have some things in common, and one of the things they have in common the most is they profess a common morality. They profess a common morality. So America is unified morally. They're not having big moral differences, are not bleeding over and dividing the body politic. Fair enough? Because moral issues can be really hard to settle politically. Economic issues are kind of easier. If Amanda wants to raise the tax, wants to cap taxes at 10%, and I want to do it at let's do it at 15%, it's easy to compromise. 12.5%, and we all go home happy. But fundamental moral issues don't lend themselves to kind of splitting the difference, meeting each other halfway. You can see the intensity, say, about the fight surrounding abortion today, or homosexuality. How hard it is to come up with some kind of settlement of those issues that pretty much everyone can buy into and be comfortable with. Okay? In America, fortunately, doesn't have to worry about these big moral issues getting injected into politics, because we're all pretty much on the same page morally. And that contributes to political unity and political stability in a big way. You with me? Item number 4 on my handy-dandy list, we will call an internalized moral compass. We will call an internalized moral compass. Over on page 292, just let me get a little caffeine here.
That's not Mountain Dew.
I know. I decided I do have 2 Mountain Dews in my fridge under my desk, but decided to go with Coke today. I decided to give myself a treat.
It's not even Diet Coke, though.
Not even Diet, that's the treat.
Yeah.
That's the treat Coke is good stuff.
It is New Year.
What?
Today's the New Year.
Today's a new year?
Yeah, it's the Asian New Year.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's the year of the horse. So.
Okay.
Also, the start of Mardi Gras is today.
And Ramadan?
Well, Mardi Gras ends today, doesn't it? Because Lent starts tomorrow. Yeah, today's Fat Tuesday.
Ramadan also starts.
Yeah.
My guy just gets in the fights, I guess.
My daughter and her husband decided to watch the San Marcos Mardi Gras parade. We're so much spirit. We had one on Saturday. Who knew? What?
My bar was in the.
Your bar was in there. Between you and I, they were not super impressed.
I was not there.
Okay. And they said the animals, they're friendly animals in parade. A friend of ours brought goats. She said it freaked out her dogs, so they were not happy with these strange animals marching down the street. So even San Marcos has a Mardi Gras parade. Probably New Orleans is just a smidgen bigger, I guess.
Good, yeah, Galveston would be one.
Yeah, Galveston would be bigger than San Marcos, yeah. Yeah.
It's decent.
Yeah, actually, I know some people who went there for it.
That sounds cool.
I haven't heard a report though since they've been back. They didn't tell me what it was like.
Not New Orleans.
What?
It's not New Orleans, but it's good.
Right, not New Orleans. Over on page 292, I said we're in that huge paragraph. If the spirit, about maybe a third of the way down, 40% of the way down, if the spirit of the Americans were free of all impediment, one would soon find among them the boldest innovators and the most implacable logicians in the world. But American revolutionaries are obliged ostensibly to profess a certain respect for Christian morality and equity, and that does not allow them to break the laws when those are opposed to the execution of their designs. Nor would they find it easy to surmount the scruples of their partisans, even if they were able to get over their own. Up till now, no one in the United States has dared to profess the maxim that everything is allowed in the interests of society, an impious maxim apparently invented in an age of freedom in order to legitimize every future tyrant. Now the key peg. Thus, while the law allows the American people to do everything, there are things which religion prevents them from imagining and forbids them to dare. Let me try to unpack that a little bit. Remember, I was telling you that over in Europe, a lot of people believe that democracy could not succeed. And it could not succeed for the simple reason that human beings were too corrupt. We're too disposed to injustice. We're too self-interested. We're too short-sighted. So in a democracy, you give the majority has the power. It will run amok. It will do stupid and self-destructive, short-sighted things. It will oppress and exploit the minority. You can't trust majorities with a lot of power. Simply can't be trusted. They're not good enough to handle such power in a responsible way. Likewise, in democracy, you give individuals a lot of elbow room to live the way they want. And again, the critique was, well, you can't trust people. Maybe there are some people, maybe some of these aristocratic types, you can trust them to act responsibly as individuals. But the vast bulk of the people, hell no. They will run amok. If you're not telling them what to do, they will run amok. They will do stupid and destructive things. They will impoverish themselves and the whole society. They will ruin their lives. They'll ruin the lives of their neighbors. As I think I said last time, it's like leaving a bunch of 8-year-olds in the house for the day. Something I've attempted. It doesn't work well. Okay? But in America, things seem to be different. Because in America, people can handle freedom. They act responsibly. Majorities don't just run amok and do stupid, destructive things. They approach things pretty intelligently and pretty fairly. I mean, they're never perfect, but for the most part, they get it right. You can trust them to do the right thing. Likewise, in democracy, likewise in America, individuals are given a lot of elbow room. But that is okay, because in America they behave responsibly. Maybe they don't do that in France when they're given elbow room, but they do in America. They do in America. I'm trying to find a passage here, and I'm not finding it at the moment, so I'll have to come back to my fun passage later. But the key point is Americans navigate freedom responsibly. They don't abuse it. They don't run crazy. They act in a broadly intelligent fashion and in a broadly just and reasonable fashion. Okay? And why is that? Is it something in the air in America, some weird pollen? Something like that? Is it some chemical in the water? His answer is the religiosity of Americans. These people have been drilled since they were knee-high to a grasshopper on the principles of morality. Things you do, things you do not do. Ways you're supposed to act, ways that you're not supposed to act. And they've heard this so much that they've internalized it. They do it automatically. They don't reach a point and say, should I act in a just manner or not? Let me think about this. They automatically do the right thing. They do the right thing because they've had principles drummed into their head. Good principles of morality. Responsible principles. And that enables them to navigate freedom, successfully. Maybe in France, you give people freedom, they go crazy. Not in America. They form vigorous local governments and set up associations to do good things. They don't run amok. Well, maybe a few of them out on the frontier, but they'll eventually be civilized, says Toquivile. Give them another generation or two. So this internalized moral compass is crucially important. You don't need to control or coerce them very much. They're going to do what's right on their own. You're going to see what's right, and they're going to do what's right. You with me? And finally, there is religion of America reminds them of higher things. It reminds them of the greatness of man, of man's sublime capacities, of his ability to pursue truth and beauty and goodness. It reminds them of the noble dimensions of human nature. The worry is that in democracy, human beings will lose sight of those dimensions of human nature. But they do not do so in America because, again, of their religiosity. So he says over on page 542, I actually read you this a little while ago. I'm not going to, that third full paragraph on the page, I read it to you a little while ago. I'm not going to read the whole last sentence. From what they learn in their churches is this: the high destiny reserved for men, of their duties and of their claims to immortality. Over on page 543, is it 543 or 544 at the bottom? That's what I was looking for. Belief in an immaterial and immortal principle is, I'm shortening the sentence here, is indispensable to man's greatness. It's absolutely indispensable, okay, to man's greatness. Religion is what reminds us of who we are and what our lives are about. It reminds me about the pursuit of truth, goodness, and beauty. It reminds us that human beings are capable of doing more than eat, drink, and be merry. That we're capable of great achievements on all sorts of different levels. Great achievements in art, literature, music. You know, great achievements just in everyday life, taking care of others, meeting human needs, addressing humanitarian crises. It reminds us of the greatness of man, that we're not simply sophisticated animals, that we're called to something more, something that's higher and more enduring. Fair enough? So in all these ways, these 5 ways, religion equips religion plays a pivotal role in making American democracy work. Toquivile says that's my conclusion. But it's not only my conclusion. I figured this out by talking to Americans. Because when I asked them, why does this all work? They said, because we're a God-fearing people. That's why. So over on page 542 again, last 2 paragraphs on the page. I have pointed to the causes helping to maintain American political institutions, among which religion seem one of the most important. Now, when speaking of individuals, religion again comes into the picture, and I think it is just as much help to each man as his own as it is to the state. By their practice, Americans show that they feel the urgent necessity to instill morality into democracy by means of religion. And if I can find another passage, give me a moment here. Over on page 293. Over on page 293. Third line from the bottom. I am sure that they being the American people, think it is necessary to the maintenance of Republican institutions. This is not the view of one class or party among the citizens, but of the whole nation. It is found in all ranks. And then over on page 292, page earlier, last full paragraph on the page. Religion, which never directly intervenes in the government of American society, should therefore be considered the first of America's political institutions. For although it did not give them the taste for liberty, it singularly facilitates their use thereof. Religion is so important, says Toquivile, that Americans consider it the first of their political institutions, the most important and foundational political institution, the kind of pillar on which everything else is built. And when he says first here, he means first, I think, I'd say in a twofold sense. First of all, political institutions, and then it was the first one. Go back to the Puritans again. Okay? It's right there at the very beginning. It lays the groundwork for the political institutions, right, which emerge out of it. But also first in the sense of being not only chronologically first, but being the most important. You with me? We all good? Before I move on, we're not done with religion yet. There's significantly more to say. We just want to make sure we're all caught up at this point. Plus, sneak some caffeine. I'm tired. So we all together? Got it? What we just said about the centrality of religion to American democracy should raise a question in your mind. You should see as perhaps contradicting, certainly being in tension with something we said earlier. And when we talked about the collapse, remember we talked about the collapse of horizons? We said what? That democratic social conditions tend to undermine religious belief. They're not conducive to religious belief. Let's read some passages and then we'll discuss this. Page 450. This is page 451. Page 450. 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph down begins. Our contemporaries, meaning those living in this new democratic society, are naturally little disposed to religious belief. In the world of democracy, people are not naturally disposed to religious belief.
What page is that?
450.
Thank you, because I already shut the book. So, page 435, my magic notes send me. Okay, very top of the page. I was looking hard and I don't need it. Men who live in times of equality find it hard to place the intellectual authority to which they submit beyond and outside humanity. Generally speaking, they look into themselves or into their fellows for the source of truth. That is enough to prove that no new religion could become established in such periods, and that any attempts to bring one into existence would not be only impious, but also ridiculous and unreasonable. One can anticipate that democratic peoples will not easily believe in divine missions, that they will be quick to laugh at new prophets, and that they will wish to find the chief arbiter of their beliefs within and not beyond the limits of their kind. Looking for something here. Oh well, they let it rest at that. The question is, why is this? Let's do a quick review why democratic social conditions are not the best of environment, the best environment for cultivating religious beliefs. Well, to begin, this is no particular order here. Can't remember the order we covered these things in earlier. To begin with, they don't like tradition and authority. People in the world of democracy are resentful of tradition and authority. They're distrustful of them. They're disdainful of them. Over on page 450, in the second paragraph, on the 4th line, people in democracies are therefore very prone to shake off all religious authority. People in democracy are uncomfortable with authority. And for that matter, they're also uncomfortable, we group it with that tradition. And since authority and tradition normally play a big role in religion, that translates to a discomfort with religious belief. And then there is the materialism of a democratic culture, right? Page 5, I've got a passage on 544. I'm not going to read it to you because I read it to you already. But it points out the democratic social conditions, people tend to get so absorbed in the pursuit of creature comfort. There's no time and there's no room for religion. They end up living as kind of practical materialists. It's not that they're going to argue with you and say, this is why I think religion is junk or something like that. It's that they just don't even have the time to consider the option. They're too busy seeking their creature comforts. They're too busy seeking creature comforts. Likewise, here's the passage I was looking for in 533. He talks about this. I've read you this passage already a long time ago, but I want you to reflect on it. It's the big paragraph in the middle of 533. I won't reread you the whole paragraph. It talks about Americans are so into material goods, into the pursuit of creature comforts, always trying to raise their standard of living. And he goes on towards the end of the paragraph, let's see, fourth line from the bottom. These are petty aims, but the soul cleaves to them. It dwells on them every day and in great detail. In the end, they shut out the rest of the world and sometimes come between the soul and God. So these religious, in a democracy, the focus on the consumerism kind of acts to crowd out religion. Plus, it's only a small step, he says, to living as though material goods are the only thing that matter, and they care about, to believing they're the only thing that exists. This kind of practical materialism, live as though they're what matters, easily turns into a theoretical materialism. There is nothing else, there's only material goods. So that's another reason why religious belief kind of has trouble in the world of democracy. And then there's democratic man's desire for something simple, something easy. Over on 430. His trouble takes something seriously that he can't quickly understand, that he can't quickly wrap his mind around. Okay, I'm on page 430, I'm about halfway down. The paragraph begins with the word seeing. Seeing that they are successful in resolving unaided all the little difficulties they encounter in practical affairs, they're easily led to the conclusion that everything in the world can be explained and that nothing passes beyond the limits of intelligence. Thus, they're ready to deny anything which they cannot understand. Hence, they have little faith in anything extraordinary and an almost invincible distaste for the supernatural. So for all these reasons, the disdain for tradition and authority, the single-minded focus on material goods, the desire to have their suspicion of anything that can be very quickly and easily explained and defended to them, it makes democratic social conditions inhospitable for religious belief. Fair enough? Are you with me?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe this could explain why Americans at that time period heard about religion did recognize political authorities being as important. You know, like the direct relationship with God, not needing a priest to have a relationship with God. It wasn't like that was like a whole movement, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's implicit in Protestantism, right? And Americans will see we turn our attention to Mausden. Early America was a very, very Protestant place.
But it was even like, I can't remember the guy's name, he did some kind of speech, but even more radical relation where you don't even need a church.
Right, you pushed all the way through to its logical conclusion.
Are you talking about Wesley, the Methodist Jew?
No, Wesley was a big believer in churches. But no, and I don't know who exactly Luke is thinking of here, but he pushed all if you follow down that road far enough, you don't need any kind of help, you don't need a priest or something to help you relate to God or get you right drugs, and you work right back. What's the point of a church then? It pushes you in a very individualistic vision of religion, and that dynamism is sort of present in how Protestantism evolves. You see it over time moving in progressively more individualistic directions. And kind of the end result of that progression is you don't need a church at all. Does that help some?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who it was. Maybe it was Jonathan Edwards.
No, he wouldn't have said that. What about Ralph Waldo Emerson?
Could have been.
Someone like Emerson or Thoreau, that sounds to me like.
I don't remember who it was, but I remember learning about it.
Okay, if you could find it, I'd be curious. But in any case, so we have a problem here. Democratic social conditions erode religious belief. America is the most democratic country in the world. America is the country in the world with the strongest religious belief. There seems to be a contradiction in here somehow. And the question is how we resolve the contradiction. But my watch says 5 of 5. And let's take a break till 10 after 5. Okay, and then we'll come back and try to explain that.
Your watch says 5:05.
No, excuse. 4:55. 5 of 5. See, I'm having that kind of day.
It is 4:58 though.
Oh, well, okay, mine. Okay, we'll take a break till a quarter after, so you get a 17-minute break.
Gotcha.
And I'm sorry for my wandering watch here, so I will
I want to make sure you're on it.
deal with him later.
I think it was Emerson. The divinity school address.
Ralph Waldo
Yes.
Emerson said, "Nothing was ever great was ever achieved without enthusiasm."
Isn't Bounty's Flake the darkest evening of year?
Thank you.
It's my special interest, so I thought I'd share it.
He gives his harness spell a shake to see if there's
Are
some
you just,
mistake.
what are you talking about?
It's a poem. I'm quoting Robert
Oh, that's
Frost.
stopping by the woods on a snowy evening.
Yeah.
2 roads.
Whose
diverge
woods
into
these
one.
are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. You will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow.
The words are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep.
The refrain, woods are lovely, don't need no promises to keep in miles to go before I sleep.
Miles
In
to go.
miles. No, that's a very pretty and powerful poem. So,
Is that
he gives his harness
What
bells
road
a
that
shake
goes
to
into?
ask if
No, that's
there's
a
been
different
some mistake. The only sound, and then I lose it, I can't.
The
So
only
that's the
sound,
only
other
sound.
sounds the sweep of easy wind and Bounty Flake.
There we go, yeah. That's a favorite poem of mine, not that I'm an expert on poetry.
I also like the one, what is it? Nothing gold can stay.
Nothing what?
Nothing gold can stay. It's like nature's first green is gold. The hardest hue to hold.
No, I really like the poetry of T.S. Eliot. So I used to
Wasteland.
cruise around in my car listening to Eliot recite his poetry. And so the Wasteland
Yeah,
drive my kids crazy.
it's crazy. I freaked out a girl I was dating because I said, "Oh, my favorite poem is My Last Duchess by Robert Browning," and
Okay.
she was like, "That's disturbing." It was just a
Yeah.
joke. Yeah.
So, yeah, I will.
So, this guy is talking to his lover, and he's saying, "That's my last Duchess on the wall." And I'm like, you know, yeah, it's kind of messed
You
up.
also, the girl that you also told that your favorite book, this one. That one.
That's all.
No, actually,
Different girl?
different. Yeah.
What was your favorite book?
Oh,
Or do I want to know?
No.
no, it's all good.
I wanna know.
Yeah, well, that's, we won't do it.
Still in my opinion.
I will promise that.
I won't.
Okay. Yeah,
Different strokes for different folks.
that is right.
Crocodile, yeah.
I'm tempted to start trying to recite parts of the Wasteland.
That's
but
right.
I've already lost the crowd, so what's the point? So,
We're here.
okay.
Toquivile.
Okay, ready to get down to business here?
Love Toquivile.
Moving from Robert Frost and Robert Browning and Thomas Stearns Eliot to Alexis de Tocqueville.
All poets.
My boy.
Well, Tocqueville's a poet of a sort. Anyhow, the question we're left with this kind of situation that didn't make sense. Democracy undermines religious belief. The American people, the most religious people in the world, are also the most democratic people in the world. How do we reconcile these things, or phrase the question in a different way? How is it that religious belief has remained so strong in America, has survived and remained vigorous, despite the ways in which democratic social conditions act to subvert or undermine it? As you might guess, this is going to be another one of our lists. That there are a variety of factors in play, not just one. And the first factor in play is human nature itself. Turn to page 296. Again, the question, how is it that religious belief survives and prospers in America, despite America's democratic social conditions? Top of page 297, actually. It is only by a sort of intellectual aberration, and in a way by doing moral violence to their own nature, that men detach themselves from religious beliefs. An invincible inclination draws them back. Incredulity is an accident. Faith is the only permanent state of human nature. Now, what Toquivile is arguing there is that kind of religious belief is the default position of the human race. We have this natural inclination towards religion. Religion is something that comes naturally to man. Unless something intervenes to kind of short-circuit that, it's what normally happens. Now, the obvious question is, why is it natural for human beings to be religious? Why is religious belief the normal state of the human race? He offers us two reasons here, two explanations for this. The first one concerns one of the inescapable realities of human life, namely death. Page 296 at the bottom. The shorts. I thought I did that very dramatically, by the way, and I got no reaction.
No, my heart dropped.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Remember the rule that was hold the applause till the end of the semester.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We don't waste too much class time.
Please.
The short space of 60 years can never shut in the whole of man's imagination. The incomplete joys of this world can never satisfy his heart. Alone among created beings, man shows a natural disgust for existence and an immense longing to exist. He scorns life and fears annihilation. These different instincts constantly drive his soul to a contemplation of the next world, and it is religion that leads him thither. Religion, therefore, is only one particular form of hope, and is as natural to the human heart as hope itself. As I said a moment ago, one of the basic realities of human life is death. Everyone dies eventually. When you're your age, that seems kind of abstract and far away. When you get to be my age, that's something that seems more real, and it's something you think about a bit. But what is death is part of the human condition, but death is a great mystery. Nobody knows what happens, and you can't see, kind of open the door of death a little bit and peek through to see what's on the other side of it. It remains something mysterious, something where we don't know what to expect. And that is frightening and that is disorienting. But at the same time that death is kind of a natural feature of human life, it seems to us that it can't be the end. We have trouble accepting that that is the very end of everything. That we simply die and we're worm food. End of discussion. There's nothing, nothing more. Confronted this mystery, we tend to hope that there's something more. It just doesn't seem right. It seems unjust almost that we should die in kind of contrary to the human spirit. So as long as we face the mystery of death, human beings are going to think about it, are going to be scared about it, and are going to hope that death isn't the final end. Hope that there is something more. So this mystery of death is a powerful impetus for religion. Even if you go through your whole life and you never have a particularly religious thought, you just kind of float through life, don't think much about bigger questions, just enjoy each day as it comes. You get to be a certain age and you realize, as you read obituaries in the newspapers or on the internet now, God, someday there's going to be one for me. That becomes kind of very real, and it forces this reality staring you in the face as something that's going to affect you. It's not something that just affects those other people. It really makes you think about what is the purpose of life, what is the meaning of everything. So this phenomenon of death pushes us to address, let's put it this way, raise religious questions. It forces us to think about questions we might otherwise be too busy or not interested enough to engage. And again, raises the question, causes us to hope that surely that can't be the very last word. So that this inevitability of death, that's one of the factors that makes religious belief natural to human beings. The other factor we can cull from page 534. Yeah, very bottom of page 534. I thought for a minute I was on the wrong page. But very bottom. He's talking about human nature here. And he says, it was not man who implanted in himself the taste for the infinite and the love of what is immortal. These sublime instincts are not the offspring of some caprice of the will. Their foundations are embedded in nature. They exist despite a man's efforts. Man may hinder and distort them, but he cannot deny them. Human beings are restless. Those are the basic facts of human nature. We tend to be very restless creatures. Somebody once said, actually the writer he created that paragraph from, said that all the problems of mankind are attributed to the fact that you can't sit alone in your room for 1 hour. So you get bored and you want to do something. I'm a big dog person. My dogs sleep most of the time. Nothing to do, I'll go to sleep. Human beings start getting restless. Well, what can I do? What can I do? I got to do something. Human beings have this inbuilt restlessness. We're searchers. We're looking for something. We're searching for something. Call it happiness. Call it fulfillment. Call it completion. We are missing something, and we try to find it. And we move from thing to thing trying to find it. Maybe it's this. No, that didn't work. Maybe it's that. No, that didn't do the trick either. Maybe it's something else, and so on and so forth. The fact of the matter is, human beings are searching for something that can't be found in this world. We look and we look and we look and we look. We never, ever find. as he says there, how does he phrase it? We have a taste for the infinite, the love of the immortal. Okay, we yearn for something that's eternal, that doesn't come and go. Something that is forever, and something that's infinite. We have a whole bit inside of us that nothing in this world seems to be able to fill. It can only be filled by something infinite. And there's nothing infinite in this world. So this quest for happiness, this quest for fulfillment, lies at the heart of human nature. Lies at the heart of human nature. And that's a powerful seed of religion, because we yearn for something more. We can't find it in this world. What is it? How? It must be somewhere. It must be somewhere other than this world. Where is it? How do we find it? Okay? That's another powerful impulse towards religion. You might even, it's something very simple, the quest for happiness, completion, fulfillment. And famous words of St. Augustine in his autobiography, Confessions. Thou hast made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you. We search for something beyond this world. And religion is a manifestation of that search, of that quest. So for both of these reasons, religion is the default position. Our religious impulse can be weakened by surroundings. Okay? Maybe even weakened a lot. But Toquivile doesn't think we can ever completely get rid of it. We're always going to have this inner impulsion towards religion. It may come and go. It may be stronger sometimes than others. In some social conditions, it might be front and center. In other social conditions, sort of tamped down. But it's always going to be there. It's always going to be there. We can't eliminate. As he said, it would be violence to human nature. You'd have to cut out part of what it means to be a human being to eliminate this. So democratic social conditions may not be the best environment for religion. They may tend to undermine religion. But this religious impulse is a powerful thing. And it's not going to go down without a fight. It is going to struggle to manifest itself even under the less hospitable conditions. So it's kind of like you have a really hardy plant. It can survive under really good conditions, but even under bad conditions, it can endure. It can survive droughts and things like that. So like if you use religious belief, democratic social conditions or drought, as it were. The waters, are not flowing the way they should. Plant may be struggling a little bit, may not be growing as fast or be as healthy as it could be. But it takes an awful lot to kill it. As a matter of fact, it's impossible. So that's number one, the naturalness of religious belief. Number two is religious beliefs linkage with patriotism. Okay, page 432.
Religious beliefs linkage with patriotism?
Yes, exactly. Linkage with patriotism. Page 432, Toquivile says the following. First full paragraph on the page, if you're flipping. I love the sounds of pages flipping in books. Makes me, you know what that's a play on, right? The Robert De Niro line, Apocalypse Now. Robert Duvall, I'm sorry. Apocalypse Now, the movie. I love the smell of napalm in the morning, is his famous line from that movie.
Oh, yeah.
See, you thought I wasn't on the cutting edge of 1972 culture.
He just died yesterday.
I know, that's why that was on my mind, so, because of that, I read the obits. Okay, 432, first full paragraph. It was religion that gave birth to the English colonies in America. One must never forget that. In the United States, religion is mingled with all the national customs and all those feelings which the word fatherland evokes. For that reason, it has a peculiar power. And then over on 293, and then I'll unpack them.
Is it 293?
Yeah, 293. I'm in that long paragraph at the end of the page that spills onto the next page. I'm a little more than halfway down. I read the following words: patriotism continually adds fuel to the fires of religious zeal. Patriotism continues to add fuel to the fires of religious zeal. Okay, in America, religion derives support not from kind of human nature and the human condition. It gets an extra boost, an extra support from patriotism. When we celebrate the beginning of the country, where do we look? We go back to, who do we commemorate on Thanksgiving, right? The Pilgrims. And the Pilgrims were Puritans of a sort. Puritan separatists, to be precise. They came over here on a religious mission. The first settlers who set American culture in motion, those settlers in New England, were fervently religious people whose whole enterprise was dominated by religion. That's the reason they came here. It wasn't for the fresh air or something. It was for religious reasons. And they came here so they could organize their churches the way they wanted and organize their government the way they thought God wanted governments organized. So the early settlers who launched this whole thing we're part of were religious. So as a result, to be irreligious is not just kind of reject religion. It's almost like rejecting America. It's rejecting patriotism. We began with religion. Are you saying our beginnings were bullshit? That the people who founded our society were stupid? Are you disrespecting our ancestors? So religion gets additional support from patriotism, its connection with patriotism. Then we have public opinion.
That's number 3.
Yes, this is number 3. I even have them properly numbered for a change. Of course, that raises the question, why I have 2 number 4? No, I crossed out 1 4, so that's good. It's not, doesn't count. Public opinion. Recall what he said. Let me talk about this, then I'll read you the passages. Recall what he said about American public opinion, or democracies in public opinion. In democracy, public opinion has a unique influence. It is sort of it speaks authoritatively. Okay? People don't want to listen to tradition. They don't have disdain for authority figures. They don't want to hear what they have to say. But they need to get their beliefs from somewhere, because they can't really figure everything out on their own. So they fall back on public opinion. So that has a unique impact into the aristocratic societies. Can't appreciate how powerful it is and the kind of pressure it exerts on people. If most people think this, we're all equal, right? Most people think this, they're probably right. I know, I don't know what I'm talking about. So it has this powerful influence. Now, in the beginning, excuse me, I'm tickling my nose. In the beginning, public opinion was very religious, correct? So you have a religious public opinion, what does it tend to do? Perpetuate itself. New people are born and grow up in this culture. Public opinion tells it to be religious. They don't think twice. They say, obviously, public opinion knows what it's saying. Everyone around, people are smart. Everyone around here knows what they're doing. They're religious. I'll be religious. So it sort of replicates itself based on public opinion. And what that means is, I'm going to Toquivile and read you passages in a minute, as I say. It exercises a huge and really strongly reinforces that. Because let's suppose I'm somebody who's sitting there and I'm just, this religion has no appeal to me. Yeah. And I look around and see my neighbors take it seriously. My friends take it seriously. Everyone else seems to take it seriously. Are they nuts? Or am I nuts? The tendency is to say, well, if everyone thinks this, they gotta be right. Who am I to set myself up as wiser and better than all these other people? So, it receives this powerful enforcement for public opinion. It's not simply that people who don't believe in religion or don't like it or whatever are afraid to speak out. That'll make them social pariahs. That's true. You don't want to alienate your neighbors. You don't want to be the guy in your little town of 250 who everyone hates. But on the other end, but also the majority public opinion has such intellectual authority that you doubt yourself and capitulate to it. Okay, I don't see why, but these guys got to be right. So people tend to go along with this. So this public opinion just rolls generation to generation, replicating itself. A few passages here. Let's start on one other thing before I start reading passages. Two other points here. And this is obviously very powerful and produces a society where Toquiville's going to say you never hear anyone criticize religion. It's hard to even find someone who's willing to criticize another church that they're not a member of. Good, religion, so everyone loves it. You don't question it. And so that lends itself to pervasive religiosity. But also, it has a little bit of a downside that we'll explore later. And the little bit of the downside is that this religion may be a mile wide, but it tends to be only an inch deep. It's not something people think a lot about or wrestle with. People are not sitting back and reading the great works of religion and trying to sort out which religion, which set of religious beliefs they accept. People aren't reading Aquinas and then Luther and then Calvin, etc., etc. It tends to be rather superficial in grace. It's not something they think deeply about and make a firm commitment of the self about. It's just everyone does it, so they do it. So although everyone affirms it, it tends to be kind of a weak faith, a weak affirmation, a mile wide and an inch deep. It's something that people haven't thought about much, that don't really know how to justify it if they were really pressed. A lot of it is just people going along saying, yeah, everyone's going to church Sunday morning, I'm getting up and going to church right with them. But it creates a pervasive, if thin, religiosity. That's a good way of putting it, I think. Okay, 4:30, just came up with that. Hopefully I'll remember for next time. I'm just trying to find, okay. Here we go on page 432. Christianity has kept, it's the third full paragraph. Christianity has kept a strong hold over the minds of Americans, and this is the point I wish to emphasize. Its power is not just that of a philosophy which has been examined and accepted, but that of a religion believed in without discussion. Christianity itself is an established and irresistible fact which no one seeks to attack or to defend. Since Americans have accepted the main dogmas of the Christian religion without examination, they are bound to receive in a like manner a great number of moral truths derived therefrom and attached thereto. That was a smooth translation. 436. Page 435 is that long passage I read you on public opinion. It's force and democracy. Very end of it, bottom of 435. He says the majority of the United States takes over the business of supplying the individual with a quantity of ready-made opinions, and so relieves him of the necessity of forming his own. So there are many theories of philosophy, morality, and politics, which everyone adopts unexamined on the faith of public opinion. And if one looks very closely into the matter, one finds that religion is strong less as a revealed doctrine than as part of common opinion. It's just sort of the package of beliefs you're handed by the surrounding culture. It's not something most people deeply internalize and reflect on. And then finally, 449. The next to last paragraph on 449. Faith derives its authority partly from its inherent strength and partly from the borrowed support of public opinion. So public opinion plays a huge role here. We good? We alive? You guys are much more quiet than usual today. Drink a lot of caffeine before the next class. So. I recommend Diet Mountain Dew.
Can we get a coffee pot from there?
What?
We don't have Dylan.
Is that the problem?
Must be.
Let's tell Dylan to come back. We miss Dylan, so. Yeah, I miss her and I miss her little boy, so. It was a cool little addition to the class. Next, what am I looking for? Point 4.
Whichever one.
Right, it's the correct 4. The first one was crossed out. Okay. This one is the religion, I might describe it as the religion of America. The religion of America. What do I mean by that? There are many religions out there in the world. Okay? Christianity in its numerous forms is one of them. But there's Islam, which itself comes in numerous forms, and Buddhism and Hinduism. Confucianism, you could argue, is a religion. Okay, so there are many different religions out there. In America, we sort of ended up with Christianity by accident, right? It was just, we were discovered by people from a Christian country. Okay? But it turns out that's a piece of luck from the point of view of making democracy work, because Christianity is a religion that works well with democracy. It goes well with democracy. The two are simpatico. There may be some differences. I think Christianity differs from, say, democratic culture about, but there's also a lot of common ground. Let me give you 1 or 2 examples of what I'm thinking. How did the idea of human equality get injected into the cultural consciousness of Western civilization?
Man is created
Christianity. So in a democratic society, a democratic society is an ethos of human equality. Everyone's as good as everyone else. No one's better than anyone else. Everyone deserves the same respect others get. Okay? That's basic to a democratic culture. That's also foundational to Christianity. If the religion of America was a religion that said, no, human beings are not equal, they're fundamentally unequal, that some people are superior to others and entitled to rule them, that religion might run into some problems. It might attract a lot of animosity. But the Christian emphasis on human equality goes hand in glove with the democratic culture's affirmation of human equality. And remember, that's at the very core of a democratic society. You get a democratic society by reaching a fork in the road and choosing the fork that says human equality, not human inequality. Do you remember the old advice of Yogi Berra, the Hall of Fame catcher, to forks in the road? When you come to a fork in the road, take it. So, the wisdom of Yogi was a wise man. What about this? This restaurant is so popular, no one eats there anymore. Sounds stupid, but yes, there are restaurants you don't go to because they're too crowded, and you can't get a seat on Saturday night. So, Yogi had his own variety of wisdom. My Yogi mug is gone at home. Somebody broke it, I bet. I haven't seen it in months. I must investigate tonight. Used to have all the sayings there. In any case, where we're going. So, one hand you have the Christian affirmation of human equality. On the other hand, you have the fact that Christianity is not a religion that gives you a really detailed, highly specified set of rules to regulate everything you do. Compared to other religions, or some other religions, it gives relatively few rules. It doesn't tell you what you can eat and what you can't eat. It doesn't tell you when you have to eat. It doesn't tell you, it may tell you to pray, but it doesn't tell you how many times a day to pray or exactly what time of day to pray. It leaves individuals a lot of latitude to kind of make up their own mind, to make their own decisions. And that's appealing to democratic man because he doesn't like authority. He doesn't like being told what to do. It leaves his agency intact. So Christianity is a religion that's well suited for democratic times. He contrasts it here with Islam on 445. Muhammad brought down from heaven and put into the Quran not religious doctrines only, but political maxims, criminal and civil laws, and scientific theories. The Gospels, on the other hand, deal only with the general relations between man and God and between man and man. Beyond that, they teach nothing and do not oblige people to believe anything. Okay? And that, he goes on, spends about a page discussing this. We'll read you the whole thing. But that jives well with democratic culture. We don't like being told what to do. So if you're going to constantly be telling us what to do every 5 minutes, we're going to rebel. We're not going to put up with it. But if you just occasionally do it, perhaps we'll listen. So Christianity is well suited in its affirmation of human equality and the fact that it's really not a law in the way that some other religions are really kind of systematic legal codes. So it's well suited for the age of democracy. We together? Number 5 on my handy dandy list. Number 5. And I left my drink in the office again. I'm thirsty. American Christianity has adapted itself to this new environment. What? Yeah, I know. I could grab some if I get desperate. It's adapted well to its environment. Christianity in America is a little different than it is in Europe. There are cultural differences there that manifest themselves, and Christianity has adjusted itself to America in ways that enhance its popularity, make it more acceptable. How so? What are some examples of this? Well, one example of this is Democratic man likes things simple, right? He does, he wants some simple, easy to learn, easy to wrap your mind around. He doesn't want to be given a 1,000-page book and told, read this and study it and come back and we'll talk. He wants something short, quick, sweet, easy that he can understand. If he sees the 1,000-page book, he says, this must be nonsense. This must be make-believe. This is incredible. I'm smart. Human beings are smart. Everything should be pretty easy for us to understand. It's that difficult. Something's really wrong. And it's not with me. American Christianity simplifies religious belief. American Christianity, generally does not include a lot of lengthy, complex religious creeds. Christianity in America takes it, kind of keeps things simple and easy, so it gives you something you can put on the bumper sticker of your horse-drawn wagon. Okay, as you head into church on Sunday. Jesus loves you with the heart, something like that. Nice, Jesus is Lord. Nice, simple, and easy. It doesn't ask you to memorize, 500 words, preferably memorizing them in Greek or Latin for precision, because they're hard to translate. So it keeps its beliefs simple. Simplify, just the basics. Easy, quick. Democratic man's in a hurry. He wants something easy, we give it to him. Likewise, American Christianity simplifies church services. It simplifies church, makes them a lot shorter and simpler than they were in the Europe of that day. They were still a lot longer in his day than they are in our day. I don't know that we could sit through a 3-hour church service. But over in Europe, it was a 6-hour service. America cut it to 3. And that made it more attractive. Simplicity, not complexity. Something brief. Democratic man's busy. Doesn't have a lot of time. He's got other things to worry about. He doesn't like complicated things. He wants some he can easily wrap his mind around. So I'm trying to look for a passage here. Where is my simplicity page? It gave me the right page. I didn't mark it up. I believe this middle page 447. Oh, forget about the middle. Up the first paragraph on page 447. Another truth seems very clear to me, that in the age of democracy, religion should pay less attention to external practices. In speaking of the philosophical method of Americans, I've made clear that in a time of equality, there is nothing more repugnant to the human spirit than the idea of submitting to formalities. Men living at such times are impatient of figures of speech. Symbols appear to them to be childish artifices used to hide or dress up truths which could more naturally be shown to them naked in broad daylight. Ceremonies leave them cold, and their natural tendency is to attach but secondary importance to the details of worship. In democratic ages, those whose duty it is to regulate the external forms of worship should pay attention to those natural propensities of the human mind in order not to run counter to them unnecessarily. I believe firmly in the need for external ceremonies, I know that they fix the human spirit in the contemplation of abstract truths and help it to grasp them firmly and believe ardently in them. I do not imagine that it's possible to maintain a religion without external observances. Nevertheless, I think that in the coming centuries, in the world of democracy, it would be particularly dangerous to multiply them. Indeed, they should be limited to such as are absolutely necessary. Were a religion which became more detailed, more inflexible, and more burdened with petty observances at a time when people were becoming more equal, would soon find itself reduced to a band of fanatic zealots in the midst of a skeptical multitude. So Christianity, American Christianity has adopted. It simplified belief, it simplified worship, and another thing it's done is to avoid challenging head-on the predispositions of a democratic culture. Avoid challenging head-on the predispositions of a democratic culture. Well, let me give you an example. Democratic social conditions encourage consumerism, right? Everyone's looking to raise their standard of living, correct? That's one of the defining features of sort of the American scene when Toquivile looks out there. But if a religion came along and said, material goods are evil, trying to raise your standard of living is wrong, and you should not do it, that religion would encounter an immense amount of blowback, an immense amount of hostility from a democratic culture. So religions on these conditions, they can't kind of frontally challenge the prejudices, the predispositions of democratic culture. They have to work around the edge. Let me quote Toquivile here. Page 448. A passion for well-being is the most lively of all the emotions aroused or inflamed by equality, and it is a passion shared by all. So this taste for well-being is the most striking and unalterable characteristic of democratic ages. It may be that should any religion attempt to destroy this mother of all desires, it would itself be destroyed thereby. If it attempted to wean men entirely from thinking of the good things of this world in order to concentrate all their faculties on the contemplation of the next, sooner or later one may be sure that men's souls would slip through its fingers to plunge headlong into the delights of purely material and immediate satisfaction. The main business of religions is to purify, control, and restrain that excessive and exclusive taste for well-being, which men acquire in times of equality. But I think it would be a mistake for them to attempt to conquer it entirely. They will never succeed in preventing men from loving wealth in the world of democracy. So confronted with all this consumerism, American Christianity doesn't say the pursuit of wealth is bad. It doesn't say sell your belongings and disperse the money to the poor. What it says is it's okay to pursue a higher standard of living. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are some qualifications here. A, seek wealth only through honest means. Don't lie and cheat the people you deal with. And for that matter, still under A here, treat your employees well, along with your customers. Point B, if you succeed in acquiring more wealth, share it. Give generously to those in need. You are, after all, your brother's keeper. And see, don't let the quest for wealth absorb all your time, all your attention, all your focus. You have to leave room for other, ultimately more important things. And you see this in the passage I read you in 542 earlier about church, right? These people spend the whole week trying to earn more money, trying to enrich themselves, and then Sunday comes and it suddenly all stops. Suddenly they go to church, not to work. After work they go home, and what do? They read the Bible. They pray as a family. They have neighbors over and they eat and pray together and reflect on God and God's goodness and express gratitude towards God and seek His guidance and His blessings. Leave room for something else. Don't let these creature comforts come between you and God. So seeking American Christianity says seek wealth. That's okay. But do it honestly. Be generous. Leave time for God. Realize you do not live by bread alone. And the attempt to live by bread alone becomes a living death. Becomes a living death. Another example here of American accommodations. Emphasize the this worldly benefits of religion. Try to find the passage. There it is. In discussing religion, you might want to talk about eternal salvation. You might want to talk about heaven. You might want to talk about communion with God. You might want to talk about the things you need to do in the here and now to someday hope to reach heaven. We together? But now a big but. But don't only talk about that. Explain how Christianity helps you in this life. Talk about how it strengthens your family. Talk about how it helps you in your career, in your job. I mean, career is sort of an anachronism in that context. How it helps at work. Talk about how it helps public life. I remember all the things that contributed to public life and stuff. So don't only talk about the otherworldly benefits of religion. Give as much, or maybe even better, more time to this worldly benefits. The benefits in space and time. Page 530. First full paragraph, third line down. Priests in the Middle Ages spoke of nothing but the other life. They hardly took any trouble to prove that a sincere Christian might be happy here below. But preachers in America are continually coming down to earth. Indeed, they find it difficult to take their eyes off it. The better to touch their hearers, they're forever pointing out how religious beliefs favor freedom and public order. It is often difficult to be sure when listening to them whether the main object of religion is to procure eternal felicity in the next world or prosperity in this world. Fair enough? Do I need to go over any of that again? I moved pretty quickly because I want to make sure I got through it. We good? If we're good,
Sorry, what page was that?
5:30. now, I'm trying to think where we go to next. What? Zealots, oh, okay. Toquivile doesn't mention it. In my case, it'll be hometown.
Does he ever talk about alcohol?
Yeah,
He talks about, yes, he talks about temperance. And that there are Americans who don't believe in drinking alcohol, see it's dangerous. There's a whole movement to ban alcohol.
Yeah, temperance would have been gaining traction.
Yeah, that would have been gaining traction. And when he was here, that's the area of pre-Civil War reform, when becomes a popular cause. So the obvious question that suggests itself is, what does Toquivile think the future holds about religion in America? Does he think America's religiosity will endure? Or does he think it is likely to be swept away?
Are these questions or?
That's a question for you guys.
Oh. Yeah, it would endure.
I think.
Built into humanity, built into the way we think, the way we act, the way we interact with each other.
I think it depends on how you read Toquivile. Because I think he could be pessimistic about it. Maybe he's not like outright pessimistic about it, but like a lot of the things that he talks about are similar to the problems with democracy. And like democracy can undermine religion if it's not careful also.
In the same way that democracy can undermine itself.
Yeah.
Yep. The answer is he doesn't come down clearly on either side of that. There are passages you can read optimistically. There are passages you can read more pessimistically, that he doesn't know that it's going to survive. The answer is, I think he truly doesn't know. You know, he doesn't have a crystal ball here to see the future. And, you know, what you have is sort of the immovable rock and the irresistible force colliding. Who's going to win out here? It's not very clear. But Toquivile thought that if America's religiosity were to erode, that would be a grave danger to American democracy. Because religiosity acts as one of the, and arguably the most important factors that enables American democracy to work. So the loss of that religion, if it happens, would be catastrophic. And then you raise the question, because he does talk about the European context. Well, it's all great to talk about what America did, but this stuff may not be applicable. You say you have a decentralized system. What if the democratic society that emerges over in Europe is extremely centralized? Decentralization's off the table. So he talks about how every society is different, and other societies may not be able to use America's solutions because their particular condition doesn't lend itself to that. If you think about it, some of these solutions, I don't want to say they're just kind of unique to America, because they're not, but they're pretty unique. You know, remember the settlement pattern is what gives you the decentralization. I mean, that wasn't planned out, just sort of the way things evolved. Even the religiosity, the fact that Puritan New England prospered and became the intellectual capital, that played a big role in fostering this religiosity. Had the southern states further south dominated more, they were a lot less religious. The people who settled there didn't come for religious reasons. They came for wealth and whatnot. They came to have a new beginning. You know, things could have played out completely different. So some of this is just dumb luck. We had these things that that enabled us to make it work. It's almost like they were handed to us. You know, here's the tools that you need. And it's about other societies, if they don't have access to these things, which you just snap your fingers and say, culture of association, everyone, join today. Doesn't work that way, right? They would have to try in their own way to invent some kind of substitutes. Something that could do the lifting that was done by the American solutions, including religion. But it's unclear what those substitutes would look like. It's unclear the role religion played. How that'd be an awful big vacuum. What could fill it? But of course, all societies are different, and maybe under certain circumstances, there could be other things. We just don't know. He doesn't answer these questions. The future is open. But he does say, I'm tempted to grab the book and dig out a passage for you, but I'm tired, so I won't. I'll read it to you next time, perhaps. He's at one point discussing the effect of religion. I think I read the beginning of the passage, not the end. He says, so if you're lucky enough as a democratic society to have a religion, be kind to it. Cherish it, because if you lose it, you're going to be in deep trouble, potentially. Fair enough? Any thoughts here? About to adjourn us? We did. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, like, I think he does have a point, because I don't think if France did democracy, they did. They tried. But it would have been, like, more authoritarian, I guess, top down or whatever, because of their Catholic ties. Like, that's what they're used to. They don't have that bottom up, like, ingrained in their culture, and then it's been very violent, for lack of a better term, I guess.
And it's been extremely centralized in all respects, France, since the 1600s.
And so, like, they couldn't replicate America even if they wanted to. They don't have that blank slate, so to speak.
Right. Wasn't a blank slate, I'd say the tools that simply sort of fell into our lap. You know, we don't deserve credit for coming up with them, they just sort of happened. But they were laying around when you're smart enough to grab them. Yeah, you don't know how it would work out in another society. Each society is going to be its own challenge. But that's certainly true. Okay, I guess we'll adjourn here. I still have some stuff we're almost done with Toquivile and religion. But I have a list of 3 topics still in my notes. Numbers 1, 2, and 5, as my notes say, with their usual good numbering. So we will do them next class. One important note here. I'm going to go through Marsden quickly. Okay, last time I taught this course, when I taught the student, I said I'm going to go through Marsden quickly, and I did it. I ate like 3 classes, and then at the end,